everyone, and welcome to my brand new podcast titled The Quiet Battle Podcast, where real people share real conversations about mental health. Today's guest on episode number one is Dan Tyndale. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, thanks. You?
Welcome to the podcast, your very first guest on my brand new mental health podcast. So, why don't you tell us a bit about your experiences with mental health, what sort of diagnosis you've had, and then we can take it from there.
In terms of diagnosis, I've had no diagnoses whatsoever, unfortunately, other than
Okay.
depression. A couple of times I've been on tablets for depression.
Yeah.
Um, but my personal experience of mental health starts from my earliest memories of
Okay.
my older brother kind of torturing me for a long time. Not just your typical, not just a little bit of teasing. I grew up in a sort of psychological warfare, and I never really knew anything different.
Yeah.
I lived in a lot of fear for the first decade and a half of my life, and yeah, you don't want to go into too much detail because it can be very triggering
Yeah.
for people
So it's like
listening.
generational trauma to do with to do with family and stuff like that that you've experienced.
Yeah, I used to get positioned to take a lot of punishments, and it started so early that it was just commonplace. That was what my life was. That's what I thought everyone's life was until I was older. Also culminated in some sexual abuse as well.
Mhm.
And then during my teens, because I was quite an odd lad for
Yeah.
obvious reasons, I got bullied mercilessly at school. I wasn't really, I didn't really understand who I was. I didn't understand how to be a person.
Yeah.
Had to figure that out when I was about in my early 20s, I would say. But in terms of my experience of my own mental health,
Yeah.
I I was very, very deep into some quite strong delusions by the time I reached my 20s. I was
Was
believing
that like hallucinations, or were they flashbacks, nightmares, or were they just like a session of like paranoia or mania or something like that?
pretty much all of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I used to have some very tactile memories. I could just remember the way things smelled and tasted, and I have a couple that were so specific I could to this day just draw them for you. I could show you exactly what the room looked like, and I remember it clear as crystal. I've been hyper vigilant for most of my life to things
Yeah.
like expressions, tone of voice, because I'm a musician as well. So sound is a big thing for me. So tone, pitch, rhythm, modulation, the way people structure their sentences,
Mhm.
being hyper aware to that kind of thing because that was my way of knowing if I was in danger or not when I was a kid. The slight
Yeah.
change in
I
things.
think that the hypervigilance is the when you're in fight or flight mode, because I get that with my diagnosis. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, clinical depression, ADHD, and an anxiety disorder. So I know about that fight or flight mode because you're always on edge. Your mind is just always on the go, and it can be triggered by many different things, and that varies from person to person. So I can understand where that hypervigilance comes in. But how dark did it get with the depression?
Yeah, pretty. I didn't look after myself at all, and it's not a particularly pleasant thing to admit. But there was a period of 3 years maybe where I barely washed. I didn't clean my clothes. I didn't look after myself physically. I think for about 2 years I didn't brush my teeth once. I was drinking very heavily, taking a lot of drugs, eating far too much. I got to about 30 stone at my
Hmm.
biggest, and playing 20, 22 hours of games in a row and not sleeping. And
Jesus.
insomnia was terrible. But I started to become quite deluded about the world around me. I started believing things like people could hear my thoughts, and I can kind of find it funny in a way now when I look back. But I started getting a lot of notions about things, like this one particular one. I had this idea, and it wasn't like a voice in my head. It was like a suggestion,
Mhm.
like it could have been a voice if I'd let it go
Yeah.
further. If I dressed in certain clothes and took all the labels out of those clothes, that I would be sent back in time. And I actually did it. I stood in this rubbish studio flat in Crumpton with all these clothes on, and then going, well, why didn't it happen? I was so deep into delusion that I it was like I looked on the bottom of my boots, and because it said caterpillar on them, I was like, oh, that's why it didn't work.
Hmm.
And my anxiety was through the roof. It was creeping out into all the things around me as well. And I remember I knew that something was wrong, really wrong, was when those notions almost like almost become a full blown voice, and I was sitting having almost like an argument with this thing inside my head, and when I realized,
Yeah.
I just put my head in my hands and I said, I must have repeated it solid for a full minute. I'm going mad. I'm going mad. And if it hadn't been for that moment, I think I'd have gone right over the falls, and I never would have come back. And that was the moment that I knew that I really needed to start changing things about.
So that was the moment you realized you needed help and you sort of found that acceptance that I can't do this alone. I'm gonna need some support.
Well, see, the strange thing is, I've tried to get support a couple of times, but I've
Mhm.
lived a very transient life. So I've got through to a couple of different things. One of which I was so pleased because I thought I finally got through to some talking therapy. It turns out it was a mandatory 8 week mindfulness course before I could even go back onto the therapy waiting list. So I
Mhm.
duly did that. And then the situation I was in broke down and I had to go and move elsewhere and moved out of the catchment. So I then had to start the process over again. I do truly think it is so important to try and seek help. Um, I have to say that I've had to do it all on my own. I've had to fight through it all and come to my
Yeah.
own realizations. But it's one of the reasons that I am such a strong proponent of mental health
Mhm.
because it doesn't matter that I've done it on my own.
Mhm.
I'm me. I'm in a unique situation that had a unique series of events that led me to the point where
Mhm.
I had no choice but to start fighting. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm just going to become a nothingness. I thought I'd fall to pieces and I'd never be seen again. Not the me that was in there. And so I just started actively refuting those voices, those thoughts, and every time they came up, I said, "No, that's a delusion. It's not real. It's not real."
Yeah,
Over
I
and over.
think a lot of people get confused with thoughts and facts. Thoughts are not facts, you know, they're just thoughts, but they can have a massive impact on how your brain processes those thoughts, depending on the nature of those thoughts. And a lot of people who suffer with poor mental health, most of their thoughts that they have are intrusive and negative. So,
Yeah.
that's where those thoughts can take over you rather than your thoughts becoming in control of you.
Yeah, that's why the ego is such a dangerous thing because that voice inside your head, it's got the power of a god, until you can recognize the difference between, like you said, thoughts and facts,
Yeah.
and being able to understand that voice inside your head, while technically it's a part of you, you're obviously not in control of it, so you need to sort of assert some kind of control,
Mm.
and the ego is it's that thing that makes us run away. It's that thing that makes us drink. It's that thing that makes us take drugs. It's that thing that's not really attached
No.
to our intellect. It's like a security program that's endlessly
Yeah.
circling your brain, and it doesn't understand that those feelings, those fears, those pains, they're not
Mhm.
happening right now. They're not there right now. The
No.
person that you're looking at isn't causing that. That's your
Mm.
thoughts doing that. The situation you're in isn't causing that. That's your old thoughts and your old
Yeah.
memory
Yeah.
coming back up, and your ego's going run, 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 run.
And I think a lot of people find it hard to deal with that type
Mm,
of ego because they have to face themselves. And a lot of
yeah.
people, rather than facing themselves, they will project their fears and insecurities onto other people through negativity and face down that ego with a bit of humility. I think, they might gain some of that control back.
Absolutely. And I do agree with you. Humility, being able to admit that you've got the problem, but also I think one of the real paths excuse me, one of the real important parts of the healing path is brutal honesty with yourself
Mhm.
as well. That it's far too easy to say everything else is somebody else's fault. Sometimes you've got to be brutally honest and say, then right then and there, that was my fault.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
caused that. I did that. That's part of the journey that I think well, not most people, I shouldn't say most people, that's a generalization. A
Mhm.
lot of people can't do or won't do. They won't accept that they're to blame.
Yeah.
Sometimes I've made some stupid mistakes in my life. I've been neglectful of myself, been neglectful of others. I've never been cruel. I'm proud to say that. I'm not a malicious person. I've never been malicious. Um, but I've hurt people without meaning to.
I think everyone, I think I swim in regret every single day, and that comes with the complex PTSD in the form of nightmares and flashbacks. So I relive these situations through with the complex PTSD, but I've told myself and admitted to myself, but that a lot of those things I played a massive part in, and I've made mistakes.
Oh, yeah, that's the. I think it's the main key to the path. It's brutal honesty, brutal honesty. Be prepared. Be honest with yourself, and that's going to bloody hurt at times. And
Yeah, of course.
you're going to find it upsetting to be able to look at something you've been through and say, actually, it wasn't all them. I did play my part well, and even at times, you can't mend those mistakes, but at least you can show contrition. At least you can say, I'm so sorry to somebody for what I did,
Yeah.
and there's bridges everywhere to be built. It's a funny one though because I find I don't find these days, and I've been on my healing journey now for coming up on 17 years this year. Started out, of course, small steps,
Mhm.
pushing myself in slightly different ways each day. Get up, move about, don't do this, something positive. And I've had a lot of setbacks. I've got involved with a couple of very damaging people who thought they were the heroes of the story
Yeah.
and had absolute disregard for anything but themselves, to be
Hmm.
honest. One in particular who gave me a quite deep nervous breakdown. It was strangely exactly what I needed because I then went on to have what's called an ego death, where the final parts of my negative identity and negative self-image about blame and shame, all that sort of negative side of the stuff that we take on as trauma sufferers, to say that those parts of us where we still say the things that our abusers said, where we still believe the things our
Yeah,
abusers
yeah.
told us to believe, trained us to believe. Like I'm not worthy. I can't have good things. I shouldn't be alive.
Mhm.
Even I don't deserve to be liked.
Yeah.
Nobody likes me. That kind of thing. That was the last time I remember having those thoughts. So in a strange way, because
I think once you've hit rock bottom and you've accepted that, the only way is up after rock bottom. And I also think when it comes to the traumas, sometimes we don't understand that these things happen to us. They don't happen for us. They've happened to us. We need to learn to live alongside those things. We'll never fully get over the trauma, but we sure we can learn to live alongside that and still have a life and still try and move forward. And I think celebrating the small wins, even if you just get up and do your bed, make your bed, that's a small win. Go and brush your teeth. Celebrate these small wins. Congratulate yourself with that, and talk to yourself a lot kinder. Because I think that inner voice and that inner critic, if you let it get too powerful, it can take you to the extreme.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Those small acts of gratitude, there's joy everywhere in the world. Even if it feels like you're in the pit of despair, you can find joy everywhere. Like the simplicity of a sunrise, watching children play,
Yeah.
or just having a fuss with a dog or an
Hmm.
animal of any kind. Those slight moments of joy, and you have to start building this web of positive experiences in between all those negative memories. And eventually, I said this to you over email a couple of weeks ago that I used to be such a negative guy. I
Hmm.
hated everything. I had nothing good to
Yeah.
say about myself. But I would say most people that know me now think I'm pretty upbeat.
Yeah.
I'm pretty positive, maybe to the point of being a bit irritating with it sometimes. But yeah,
No,
I can't. I
but
get my
that's
whole
just
life.
honesty with yourself, isn't it? That honesty coming through that
Yeah,
you've been through this, but not have you been through everything. You've also survived everything because you're here today just to talk to people about that. So I think, that deserves credit and that deserves a bit of positivity, doesn't it?
yeah, absolutely. And perspective, perspective has been a big part of it for me as well. So it's like you were saying, you never, and to anybody listening, I am really sorry to be blunt. You're never going to genuinely get over this.
No.
If you could get over it, it wouldn't be so impactful in your life. If
Yeah.
you could forget about it, it wouldn't be so impactful in your life. It's about learning how to be yourself, either again or for the first time maybe, to be
Yeah.
yourself with those things because those things are part of who you are now.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to find that positivity, to find that joy, to find that gratitude for everything that you've got. Every morning you wake up, that's the first thing to be grateful for.
Absolutely.
Your opportunity to
Mhm.
go out and find joy, your opportunity to find healing and find some way that you can affect positive change in your own life or seek it out.
Yeah. I think
because
it's what you tell your subconscious is what your brain will look for. So if you're telling your subconscious, this is negative, this is bad, I don't like myself, it's going to start to believe that. And once it
yeah,
believes it, it's not going to let it go. So
yeah.
I think, talking to yourself a bit kinder and understanding that is sort of opening new pathways for your mind to go down rather than taking the negative route.
Absolutely. It's the same thing that, that security program, the ego, the more you feed it information, because it's not actually connected to
Mhm.
your memories properly. It's not connected to your rational mind. It's like thinking about it in the same way as your mind body feedback loop. So your mind talks to your body.
Yeah.
Not quite. And your body and mind kind of understand each other but don't.
Mhm.
You're in control of your mind, but you're not. You're in control of your body, but you're not. It's like you've got this little thing. You're feeding it all these negative thoughts all the
Yeah.
time. It's always going to be in your ear going,
Yeah.
"Okay, terrible. Oh, that person doesn't look right. Blah, blah, blah. Or this can't possibly be right. Somebody's being kind to me. Somebody actually wants to be around me for who I am. Wants
Paranoia
to,
increases, doesn't it?
yeah, yeah, God, yeah, it does. Yeah, those kinds of experiences, they put a lens in front of your vision and in front of your intellect, and everybody around you has the potential to be just like that person or people you have been in your past.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it true. Some people are right in front of you, and they could be the best thing that you've ever
Yeah.
experienced,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you'll still try and run away from them, and that's
Because
why
we
you've
have
got like
because we
that.
have generational trust issues because of our trauma, every person that comes into our life, we automatically assume at some point they're going to hurt us or we're going to hurt them because of whatever reason that may be. And I think we need to start trusting people a lot more because I think pe good people can bring you back from the brink. And
Yeah.
I know how dark depression is. I tried to end my life twice. I tried to kill myself in February of 2022 and again in May of 2022. I had a full mental breakdown due to many things that I didn't face in my life and I didn't want to admit. A lot of family trauma that was never dealt with
Mm.
because we were never to speak about it. We were just to move on and that sort of thing. And I got to a point where I was working to try and keep my mind occupied 60, 70 hours a week as a retail manager, just to keep myself going. Yeah, what happened was one day I went to work, I opened the store as normal, done all the morning bits, got all the tills on, and then something in my head just snapped. And I left work that day and tried to end my life. And since then, that's when the diagnosis came. So I know how powerful your mind can be once it snaps.
Yeah. And I think, oh, forgot how to speak there for a second. I've had a lot of wounds that are centered around love and trust.
Mhm.
So my older brother inflicted so much pain on me and left me with so many memories to heal from. And yet, still for years, I just wanted him to love. He positioned me to take punishments from other people who were supposed to love me. So my one of my remaining major triggers is betrayal from a close person or someone I've tr put my trust in, and I can find that quite frightening still. I've had some recent experiences that were very difficult for me because I felt like I had my voice and my agency taken away, and that was just like in some ways being a kid again. That sent me through a lot of old memories. That was difficult, but I refuse to make me give up because I met someone recently who's genuinely lovely. I'm still waiting for there to be something that goes, see, told you that was right.
Yeah.
But it's getting easier
You're
to
looking
over.
for things to reinforce that negativity in you. You're looking
Exactly.
for evidence out there that, no, I'm going to be right in a minute. Something's going to happen, and you just haven't got the trust to keep moving forward. I've spent the last couple of years trying, pushing people away and not letting people close to me,
Yeah.
self-harming. If I didn't have all these tattoos on my arms, they'd see all my scars, but those scars show me that I've survived those moments as well, and they remind me that I I took it on myself to go and get help. I forced myself to go and get help because, my son wouldn't have a dad and my mum would have lost a son and because I'd accepted my life was over. I didn't want to live anymore. I'd come to the end. I went home, and done what I'd done. I was unsuccessful and tried again in the May and I was unsuccessful. But once you've come back from wanting your life to be over to having hope again. You start
Mm.
seeing things a bit differently. And
Right.
through therapy and counseling, I've learned that if you can gain three things and put them into your life, then it will improve. That's clarity, purpose, and perspective. And if you can find those three things in your life, then you can use those three things to build.
Clarity, purpose, and perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that as well, clarity, purpose, and perspective. I suppose that has to include direction as well.
So you know where you're going, you know where you want to go.
Yeah,
You're clear on where you're honest with yourself, with where you
sure.
are. You're
Yeah,
getting the help. You need to have purpose in your life in order to move forward. So maybe that's your music for you, and for me, it's the my YouTube channel, and my in my professional life, I'm a life coach and my coaching business. So that's my purpose, and my perspective is I start questioning now my inner critic and my intrusive thoughts instead
yeah,
of them just telling me. I'm questioning those things and looking at things through a different perspective,
yeah.
through a
That
positive lens, if you will, rather than a negative lens.
yeah. I refuse to allow myself to be ruled by those things anymore. I don't always succeed, of course,
Mhm.
because then I find it difficult to let my walls down with people. And if then after that there's any kind of like I don't want to swear, any kind of
Oh, you can swear, it doesn't matter.
oh well any level of fuckery
Yeah.
is what I was going to say. Intentional or other, it doesn't matter if it was intentional or not, if it's happened. And that's the important thing.
Mm.
So I find it very difficult to allow people to stay close. If I've let them close and they've been messing with my calm or my peace, then I kind of just sort of want to cut them out and say, until you understand wwhy you're gone,
Yeah,
stay
yeah.
gone.
Absolutely.
But this lady I've just met, she's very down to earth. We're on the same wavelength in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
We've had a few conversations about it. She does know what I've experienced in life. She's been very patient, which is, of course, what I needed.
Yeah.
And I do have a very positive outlook, like I say. So I'm hopeful that that is going to be something that I really need. And that's like if your wound is like mine, related to something like trusting someone you care about, trusting someone that's close to you, you can't learn what it is to be in a healthy situation without actually going into that situation again, without actually
Absolutely.
finding yourself in a loving relationship or in something that fulfills those missing parts of you, even if it's scary at first.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
taking yourself out of your comfort zone and putting
yeah,
yourself in a position where you're going to feel these things again.
yeah,
Yeah,
because that's the key. Your ego. I know I keep coming back to this, but I think it's so important
it
that
is.
that, that,
Yeah,
that
ego is.
security program. It's gonna make you run away from things that
Mhm.
challenge you. But the fear, I think, in fact, I don't just think I believe that that is the sign you're on the right path.
Mhm.
Something's making you afraid. It's challenging you. It's not that you're afraid of it. It's your ego going, run away now. It's going to
Mhm.
hurt. Run away. That's the sign that you've either got something that you need to go down to turn that fear into power, into
Yeah,
personal power and self-empowerment by changing your pattern and by
yeah. I
facing
think self-care is how you take your power back. Um,
yeah, too right. Yeah.
it really is, and I think with that ego and that sort of mindset, when the ego starts feeding you because you're no longer under its control,
Mm.
then you can start really recovering and looking at different avenues.
Yeah.
And what I use my lived experience with my diagnosis and in my coaching as well. And I tell my clients all the time that whatever they've been through is just a part of them. It's not all of them.
Mm.
Um, it doesn't have to define who they are, but it is a part of you. Once you
Yeah.
accept that it's a part of you, you can learn to live alongside it. And I think that's what we're all trying to do. Trauma survivors, it's just live alongside our traumas.
Yeah. And we excuse me. A lot of us don't want to face that because it means engaging with those memories again, breaking a pattern that has made us feel comfortable for a time. But that's it's all part and parcel of the same thing. It's like you said, coming out of your comfort zone. Even if you think, if you start to think, I'm fine now,
Mhm.
then you drop yourself into another potential trap of your own making, where
Yeah.
you've healed to an extent, But the really important parts of life, you're going to be missing out on because you're not willing to face the fear. You're not willing
Absolutely.
to take a step forward.
Mm.
And it's like you were saying, clarity, purpose, perspective.
Yeah,
You can pick a direction and you have to keep moving. Time is going to keep passing you by, even if you're sitting still. And I think one of the worst things in the world, I think I say this kind of stuff quite often, so I repeat myself in different ways, in different platforms, and I don't care because it
hmm
doesn't stop it being any less true. I don't want to look back in 30 years and say, that is something I could have had. I don't want to leave this world with my last thoughts being regret and
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah,
screw that.
yeah.
Fuck
Yeah.
that.
I've had enough of regret. It's, if you spend your time with the regret and let it manifest itself, it just becomes toxic. And then
Yeah.
that toxicity will just consume you. And
Yeah.
then, you're not even living then, you're just existing.
Mm.
And again, what I tell my clients who I'm coaching is that life, I could sum up for them in 3 words. Life goes on. Whatever's happening to us, whatever we've done, whatever might happen in the future, life will continue to keep moving forward. So
Mm.
we have to sometimes revisit things in the past in order for us to be able to move forward. And I think when the only thing stronger than fear is hope. So if you can use that hope and overcome that fear and deal with those things, then you're going to be able to move forward at some point.
Yeah. Regret your mistakes,
Hmm.
but what you'll regret more is the chances you don't take. And
Absolutely, yeah.
hope is the most powerful thing on earth.
Yeah.
Hope and not to sound morbid, hope and death are the two things that strive, make us drive forward because we know one day we're going to die.
Yeah,
So
that's
you
the
have
only
to hope
certainty in
for
life. The only two certainties in life is you're born and at some point you're going to die. The rest of life is just a culmination of many different moments, and it's about what you do with those moments.
yeah,
Um,
life
that
is
matters.
amazing. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, it's what you do with those moments that matter, and whether that be if you're going to stay still. What I would say to someone is one day your life's going to flash before I would say to yourself, make sure it's worth watching, you know?
Yeah, too.
Stop
Yeah.
standing still and
It's so you can plan your next move.
exactly, yeah. And
If
some
you're
you
sitting
will have
still,
to take a step back to put yourself through that. You've got to be willing to do the work. And I've done the work with my therapist and counselor since 2022, and I've had the same one for 4 years now. So I've done the work. And if I hadn't have found her, I'd be dead today. I wouldn't be here. She played a massive part in saving my life. So and I know a lot of people have different types with therapy. Some people don't. But for me, I can only speak from my own personal experience. Therapy was massively helpful for me. But men find it hard to go to therapy. Why would you think that is?
it's ingrained. It's
Mm,
societal. My dad was a naval officer, and he was quite authoritarian, disciplinarian. So he had to be quite regimented in a lot of ways, and which was odd considering he was a violent, racist, alcoholic, misogynist. So yeah, you have to be regimented, but only in the ways I say. But he was a prime example of don't cry. You don't cry. Men don't have emotions. You punch your way through problems. If
it's that
somebody's going to face your problem, you're going to deal with them. You're going
it's
to do
that
it.
toxic masculinity, isn't it?
Yeah,
That generational toxic masculinity. I think that's what we suffer with. Well, that's what most men suffer with, who then just suffer in silence.
I'm really pleased that the world has changed. I'm
Mhm.
because my dad was away a lot.
Yeah.
My mum was, I don't know if it's fair to say, a second wave feminist. She did believe that you can find gender equality, but you can't do it by focusing solely on the needs of one gender. You have to
hmm
find a way to balance it. You have to
Yeah,
find give and take in every situation. My dad didn't
absolutely.
believe that, unfortunately, but because he was away, she raised me to have a healthy respect for women, to understand that we're two halves of the same species. I think that's been a huge difference for me for not being toxically masculine, for being completely able to admit that I have emotions. I have quite powerful emotions. Sometimes they can be overwhelming. If I get hurt, I cry. If I get
But
lost, then I feel down. And
that
I'm
just
not.
makes you human.
Yeah, we
Nothing. You're not a robot. That just makes you a human being.
I mean, is there any? I think it's no wonder that in so many men end their lives because we're living. It's like round peg square hole. You're saying this is what you should be,
Yeah,
this is what you are, but I'm going to force you to be in this anyway.
yeah,
You have to follow this preset rule book that says you don't actually live with that quintessential part of who you are. You push it down, you push it back, and I think as well it is also a societal thing as part of the viewpoint on it as man as the provider, as the
hmm
strong one, as the one who brings home the bacon.
yeah,
That's ingrained in us as well.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
your family rely on you, so you must be strong. So
hmm
if you're going to be weak and cry, and you're not going to be able to be there at all times and be the strength they need, then what are you? Technically, you're not a real man, which I don't actually believe at all.
No,
Yeah,
no, yeah,
it's not the only thing that makes you a man is having man's genitals.
yeah,
That's
absolutely.
it. That's
Um,
it.
and I tell myself I'm more of a man for asking for help rather than not asking for help. I found the courage to ask for help. I think that made me stronger as a person. It made me more resilient that I could admit to myself and then I could open up to a stranger and who's also a female about the most inner and dark thoughts that I had in my head and going working with her these last 4 years has shown me that your mistakes are just lessons. They're not life sentences. So, if you can use that courage you find from whatever support network you've got, whether it be someone, a lady in your life, or your family member, whoever, if you can use that positively, then it can only benefit you in a positive way.
Yeah. I may have had the journey of doing pretty much all of it on my own, but that doesn't mean I don't believe in therapy and talking therapy. And I think it's vastly important. The way that we deal with our thoughts when they're stuck inside our head, they're very, very different to when we externalize them through speaking. Quite often, that's why talking therapy is so
Hmm.
powerful, so
Yeah,
important. We say things out loud in different ways to the way we would think them.
yeah,
And that's why that process of being questioned by someone
yeah.
and
It's
and
those questions that make your mind think.
yeah,
I've been telling myself this for so long. She's asked me one question about it. She hasn't agreed with what I've said. Oh, I might that voice might be wrong, you know?
yeah. Well, it's similar to the process that I followed for self therapy because, like I said, I've got into a couple of situations. The one where I got forced to do mindfulness and then had to move. I got through. I can't remember what it was called, but it was through Andy's Man's Club, which
All
is a
right, yeah.
great concern. Andy's Man's Club. They have frequent meetings for anybody who's feeling
Yeah, I've seen them
isolated
on
or
social
depressed.
media.
Yeah, they're great. They're really
Yeah.
great.
Hmm.
If you even if you just reach out once, I think you'll see anybody listening. If you're feeling isolated or lonely, reach out to Andy's Man's Club because they're definitely worth it and they're definitely a good group of people. But I got through to this group therapy session and I was told that it would be me and five others who are all
Hmm.
women. And I said, oh, I don't have a problem with women, but do you think it's a good idea to have a man who's also been abused by women and then five women who've been terribly abused by men? I don't think it's going to be a good mix, and it really was not a good mix. So those are my two experiences of therapy: being forced to do mindfulness, which I was already doing, and to be sat in a room full of women who looked at me with extreme levels of hate and mistrust. That was not a pleasant experience. But
Oh, some people do self-therapize though, don't they? They're able to do that. They find a way.
well, I found Jungian shadow work. Shadow work. It's difficult, but it's like you ask yourself the therapist's questions, and your brain is ready to give you those answers. There's a lot of
Mhm.
those answers in there. You just need to learn how to do the discipline. If if you've got the will to do it and you've got the strength to face the fear and not run away. I'm not saying that it's for everyone. Just
No,
like you said, therapy is not for everyone.
no,
This
it's
is
not. No.
but if you think you can do it, if you think you
Hmm.
can face down your shadow, but there are Jungian practitioners as well. There are shadow work practitioners. I've never been to one, but I was considering recently maybe getting qualified as a shadow
Hmm.
work practitioner. I find it very easy to talk with people, and people do tend to open up to me at
Yeah,
times,
yeah.
quite often, in fact. And I think
That's a skill in itself, isn't it? Being able to talk about your emotions and being able to be comfortable in other people talking about theirs and be comfortable in that situation. That's a skill in itself. And that's why throughout my therapy over the last 4 years, I decided I didn't want to go back to my old job. I wanted to help people, but I didn't want to be a counselor because there's too many triggers for the
Mm,
PTSD. So I
mm,
decided I researched life coaching and that's what I did. So this that purpose of helping people, me being able to communicate, because I swear a lot on my YouTube channel anyway. I say it how it is. Say what's on my mind. It's all documented on my YouTube channel from the day I broke down to now. But having the capacity to listen to people and feel empathy is a skill. So, I found that passion in wanting to become a coach, and I can understand that, that thought process of wanting to possibly be, a practitioner or whatever.
yeah. I mental health is the most important thing in my life, and I think it's something that I would love to help other people with. Anytime anybody opens up to me and shares something with me that's private and that's hurtful, I'm so honored
Mhm.
that they could trust me in that moment to tell me things. I don't think I have ever abused somebody's confidentiality and shared that with other
No.
people for the details of it. And I find it one of the greatest honors of my life when somebody trusts me with something that
Yeah, and there's no other feeling like it. It's when you have a connection on a human level with someone and you're both co-regulating with each other about certain things. And I think a lot of people who don't talk about mental health, who are afraid of the stigma or the discrimination, they need to find the people who are able to talk about it and verbalize it in order to be inspired to talk about their story. And, it's important that stigma is something we need to get over. But why do you think mental health stigma still exists in society today, despite increased awareness, despite, a lot of people on many different platforms talk about mental health. But why do you think stigma still exists?
caring.
Yeah.
And I think it's very much the same for the stigma. We're at a really critical point in this evolution of mental health in that and it's a wonderful time that we can say it's not a sham. People are
Mm.
suffering every day, all the time, all over. The stigma still exists because we're still sort of mired by old ways. We're still stuck in, and we still have all those people who say that mental health is a choice.
Yeah.
I am so pleased for you that you have not struggled with anything enough that your mental health has been challenged. I'm really pleased that you're happy, but it doesn't mean, like you say, thoughts are not facts. It doesn't mean that mental health doesn't exist just because you haven't been challenged enough to the point where you want to walk off a bridge
No,
or
exactly. Mental health is invisible. And
yeah.
unfortunately, it's a war that goes on in someone's mind. They go through all these battles in their mind. And
Mm.
someone could be suffering from functional depression, which is basically just going, living their life day by day, but behind closed doors, they're broken inside,
Yeah.
you know?
Or atypical depression, where you can still
Yeah,
function on a level where you've got the ability to laugh at things and find things
exactly.
enjoyable, but you are diminished inside. You
Yeah.
you are
And,
down to
and that's what people don't understand. And
yeah.
I always say mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, but stigma
Oh,
and bias is,
oh yeah,
so
definitely.
um I
Well,
get
I
a lot of
think
trolls on some of my
yeah,
videos and some of my
yeah,
lives, and they say, "Oh, get over it, or man up." We've all been through traumas, blah blah blah. That's just the way of the world, isn't it? Unfortunately, but I think
if
people, guys like yourself and me, who are talking about it, who are open about it, and are trying to explain to others why this might happen, that might give people the courage, to talk
yeah.
about their mental health.
That's why I think that we're at such a wonderful time as well, because that stigma, we're at a
Mhm.
kind of we're at a bottleneck at the moment. So all this information about mental health and being open, it's come to this point, and I think all the only thing we can do from there is spread out, and it can get easier and better for everybody.
Yeah,
And it's just such a shame that things are so bogged down in the health system that we find difficulty. But there have been, excuse me, such massive leaps forward with online communities and social communities like Andy's Man's Club,
yeah,
normal people who know what it's like, people like yourself who are making podcasts, getting the word out. People, well, not to name any names, of course, because he's not given me permission to say anything. But a guy I know who's very big into mental health as well. There's a lot of sort of outreach things. Gives his own time outside his normal job to go and help people. The world's changing. I think that stigma is going to get less and less, and it's going to get.
I hope so because, I see a lot of across social media, not just YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. You see a lot of therapists and you see a lot of counselors talking about things, and you see experienced life coaches like Mel Robbins and Jay Shetty and all these people talking about it. But very rarely do you see people with lived experience of real trauma talking
Mm.
about mental health and being so honest and open about it. I know sometimes some people can't relate to me being so blunt about wanting to end my life and trying to. I just need to be honest with myself with that. If you don't like it, then unfortunately, I can't do nothing about your feelings. But, you know, mental health is something that is my purpose now through this channel, through this podcast, through my other channel. And obviously then I take that into my life coaching business as well. So, I think people or generally anyone who talks about their mental health is helping people. They're a
Yeah.
part of the solution, not the problem.
And any little fragment from a story can help somebody if it jives with them, if it chimes with them. But you're talking about social media. I am actually really worried about one aspect of social media at the
Mhm.
moment. As I said, I'm a teacher, so this whole movement of the Andrew Tates, and I am genuinely scared that a new generation of boys is going to be taught that instead of this parity that we've been coming to, they're going to say, "Oh no, men are better than women are down here, women do this,"
Yeah.
and I'm genuinely worried about that because I think that in particular could cause a lot of mental health issues
Oh,
for men.
absolutely. I agree because I'm scared that I don't want my son growing up with that sort of mindset. I
Mm.
want him to treat everyone equally with respect.
Yeah.
And that sort of rhetoric is dangerous, when it comes to children and what they're learning and how they should be.
It's just
But
it's just vitriolic as well. It's all it just feels so. Ugh.
too simplistic. It's just nonsense. It's nonsense. Someone like Andrew Tate, he criticizes men for talking about their feelings that we're pussies. I mean, if your mind had been through half the stuff that mine have, then you wouldn't be saying that someone like me would be a pussy. So I agree with all of that. Have you ever felt judged or misunderstood or treated differently because you've had mental health struggles?
Oh yeah, yeah. I was again without going into too much detail.
Yeah, yeah,
A couple of times by people that I've been allowed to get close to me. I didn't properly start making something in my life till I was about 29, 30. I'm
yeah.
45. So yeah, oh, 16, yeah, 16, 17 years. So about 28, 29 when I really started pushing the things. And now I have a good career. I'm pretty well liked, I think, and respected by most people I know. And if not, sorry, your problem, not mine. I'm not an asshole.
Yeah.
So if you've
No,
got a problem with me, then I think it says more about you than it does about me.
absolutely.
But I've been told that the reasons, the genuine reasons, and the places, the very deep places that I've been lost in my life, were excuses. I should have 20 grand in the bank. You should have this. You should have that. Why can't you do this? Blah, 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 blah. Because I spent the first 25 years of my life fighting back from holes that were in my head that shouldn't have been there. My brain didn't know how to cope with.
Surviving.
Uh, yeah, surviving. You wouldn't say to a soldier who's come back from war, "Why aren't you fine yet?" Yeah, you stood on a mounted machine gun and watch people's bodies get blown to pieces for weeks. Oh, what's wrong with you? You're back now. You're fine.
Yeah. A lot of
What
people say that
service?
to me. You say you've been diagnosed with complex PTSD. Have you been to war? It's not PTSD is not just, for people who have been to war. It's any traumas that you relive through nightmares and flashbacks. So yeah, I understand that as well.
Well, that's I think that's why knowledge is quite key as well. Why it's so important to talk about complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah,
I'm quite convinced that I do have that.
yeah,
I've just never had the diagnosis. It comes from sustained trauma over multiple
yeah,
years,
yeah,
multiple situations. PTSD comes from one or several major traumatic events that
yeah.
hit you, and your mind needs to do something to cope with it.
Hmm.
If you've been brought up in that, where your life was nothing but fear, how
Hmm.
how do you be a real person? I didn't have a positive male role model. I had to teach myself how to be a man, and I'm proud to say that I've become the kind of man that my child self would have loved and would have confided in.
I think we all neglect that inner child in ourselves, don't we?
We do.
We neglect that voice. Sometimes we should, talk to that inner child, that side of us, that to say that, yes, I did this, you'll be proud of me. I've done something. And the best relationship you'll ever have is the one that you have for yourself, because you're with yourself 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
So if you could improve the relationship you have with yourself, then you could improve, everything around that.
Yeah. Inner child work is very powerful as well. But, people poo-poo it. I mean, even things like I've done a shamanic journey, several shamanic journeys, and it's amazing what your mind will reveal to you if you allow it, and if you allow yourself to get into a state where you're not only willing, but you're being honest with yourself. You're seeking it out with purpose, with direction, with that clarity, and with the perspective of honesty and the perspective that, yeah, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
That can't hurt more than spending the rest of your life not trying.
No. I mean,
And
if you
then
spent 25 years of your life surviving, maybe it's time to start living now.
yeah,
And not giving that part of your life the power anymore. And that's what I've learned through therapy and counseling. I sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because I give those thoughts, those flashbacks, those nightmares, I give those things power, and I look for evidence all around me to
yeah,
reinforce that negativity. And sometimes I'm
yeah.
my own worst enemy with that.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still feel afraid,
Mm,
but I don't let it
mm,
rule me, not anymore. No way.
mm,
I'm afraid of what could happen, but that
mm.
doesn't mean it's going to.
No.
I've been this new relationship. I've been quite afraid of the
Yeah.
potential for it to fail. But I've talked about it. I've talked to myself about it. I've talked to her about it. I've been very open about it, and just that even that simple process of vocalizing it and talking about it, it really just does help you push past that fear and to
Absolutely.
reach for something that could change your life.
Absolutely.
What
It's like what if this goes bad?
if
But on the flip side, what if it goes good?
that one?
It's
But we never say what if it goes good,
that's
do
what
we?
I'm
We
saying. Yeah.
always say, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
It's
wonderful
it's,
world of what if.
it's that change of mindset saying, asking myself negative questions. Well, what if this works out? What if I am happy?
Yeah.
Instead of this ain't gonna work out.
What if
She's
this
not they're
person
not gonna
makes me
understand
feel
what
the
I've been.
best?
Exactly, yeah. But what do you think some of the big misconceptions are about people that they have about, mental illness? Why do you think that some people just any attention because they think it's just something you can get over? It's a misconception that you could just get over any type of mental illness, whether it's just, even if it's in the UK, will suffer with a common mental health disorder, whether it be depression and anxiety. So, people there are a lot of misconceptions about mental health.
And I think it's a similar answer to the one about stigma. People are either uninformed, misinformed, or
Mhm.
don't want to be informed.
Yeah,
And if you're the kind of person who doesn't give credence to mental health issues,
yeah.
then why are you even bothering saying anything at all?
I know.
What's the point? If you
Why,
don't
why are
believe
you
it,
watching that mental health content? If you
why
don't
are you
believe
telling
it.
people who are trying to help each other?
Yeah,
Go back to your bridge. Go.
yeah,
It's, but then on the flip side of that as well, people who will say things like, "Oh, well, this happened to me and I just got over it." You probably didn't just get over it. You'll have
no,
pushed it down. That's just denial. That's
it's
just
nonsense.
that's forcing it down. And I will guarantee that those people, the way I look at it is it's like a scale with 1,000 paddles. So
Hmm.
you're going to push down this one and say, "Oh, I'm fine now," but you
Mm.
didn't see 20 feet behind you, another one pops up and it's got something else on it like alcohol or fighting or mistreating someone or laughing in somebody's face and
Yeah,
deriding them because they've got a mental health issue. I think it's one of the deepest conceits there is to believe that you not only know better than somebody, but you know better what's going on inside their head, and to tell them that you're right and they are wrong when you're probably doing the exact same thing.
I was one of those people who tried to deny anything was going on in my mind. And that sort of attitude and that mentality almost cost me my life. I wouldn't be here today making a new podcast, talking to real people, sharing stories, and I wouldn't have created my other channel, Pieces of a Broken Mind. A conversation is a very powerful thing, and I've learned that. I haven't always been a great communicator. It's only happened over the last couple of years through through therapy, through counseling, and developing certain skills. But I can see now how powerful a conversation can be because it can save a life. But if you don't have a conversation, your mental health can take a life. So it's important that, you know, we put the emphasis on conversation.
Mm. No, yeah, conversation, but in the vein that you're doing something about it. That if you're going to live in stagnation of any kind, then it's you can tell yourself a thousand different ways that you're not fine.
Absolutely. You're just lying to yourself.
And you're doing to yourself what the people who gave you those fears are doing.
Yeah,
You're telling yourself something that isn't true. You're making
absolutely.
your mind feel and think in ways it shouldn't have to. You need to open up. You need to
You're
face your fears.
sabotaging yourself.
I'm a victim of that
Yeah,
myself as well,
yeah. And
far too many
that
times.
happens a lot with people with mental health. We
Yeah,
self-sabotage because
yes.
we're afraid of facing the darkness. But
Or the pain.
oh, the pain, yeah.
You think that something's going to go badly. So instead of taking the risk and potentially having it go badly or really well, you just blow it up. And you
Absolutely,
go,
yeah.
there you go. Done. Told you it was going to end badly, or I ended it on my terms. So therefore I couldn't be hurt. But therefore you also couldn't be held. You couldn't be healed. You couldn't be you are worth being listened to. You are worth having breath in your lungs. You are
Mhm.
worth somebody looking you in the eye and not doing so with disdain or disgust and seeing that yourself as a human being. Because
Absolutely, yeah.
that's the only real label that matters. Not man, not woman, not nothing. I don't care if you're gay or straight. I don't care where you are on a gender scale. I don't care anything about the fact that you are a human being. You treat me and others with respect, and that's
Mhm.
all you'll get back from me as well.
Absolutely. I done a short YouTube video for my other channel, and it was just a short few seconds clip, and all I wanted people to say hear was that they are enough, they matter, and the world's a better place with them in it, and they shouldn't let anyone else ever tell them that they don't mean anything, because someone out there loves you, someone
Yeah.
out there does miss you, would
Or,
miss
or
you,
will.
or will love you. I think for me, and I learned the hard way that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. So yes, I end all the pain and I'm gone, but I've just passed the pain on to someone else, so
Yeah,
I
and you've
understand the
also taken
importance of
away
that now.
you've also taken away the potential positive impact that you're feeling in that moment like you want to end things, but we we live in a single moment of experiential time. So
Mhm.
we exist solely in this moment. We're the sum of everything that came before. But that doesn't mean it has to rule your future. And you can make your future whatever you want. You could be that light in someone else's life. You can bring that sense of peace and
Mhm.
calm to other people just by being a set of ears to listen, just
Absolutely.
by being in the room while they talk, or just by smiling at someone in the street. It's the simple kindnesses and the simple acts, tiny little things that you think are inconsequential that can change the path of a whole life, including your own. And
Absolutely. No,
don't give up ever.
it the there's a fine line between giving up and not giving up, because a lot of people didn't wake up today. But if you did, then you're blessed. You should be grateful for that. We should be
Mm.
grateful that we have another shot at life. We have another go at trying to turn this around. And I think once you have that sort of mindset, you're able to maneuver life in a much more comfortable way. It's about not having a closed mindset, but being open to change, being open to someone loving you again, being
So,
open to be vulnerable and being taken out of your comfort zone.
yeah,
And that's food for thought for everyone, I think.
yeah. A woman I have tremendous amounts of respect for called Brene Brown. She talked a lot about the power of vulnerability. It was something I
Mhm.
found immensely interesting and helpful in my own life. I, I I am very happy to be vulnerable with people who I allow to
Mhm.
get close because
Absolutely.
it's another opportunity to find like minds, to find people who are either like me and have had those experiences or are like me in the way that you can be soft and gentle with someone who's been hurt and you can help them. Even just simple things. It makes me, that's one of the things I find joy in. even if it's just
There's definitely strength in vulnerability, isn't there? There's
mm,
definitely strength there in vulnerability
mm,
and showing that you showing that you could be vulnerable. I think there's a strength in that that people will see. Wow,
yeah,
he's admitting, he needs help. That's powerful. That can be powerful. That can be visceral for anyone to see. And that's what I hope with my mental health content, that even if it just helps one person that day,
mm,
I've made someone else think differently that day. And
yeah,
it's never been about views or subscribers, because if it was, I would have given up a long time ago. But I do it because there might be one person that day that watches my content and says, "Wow, I am not alone,"
I'm not.
and I'm happy with that.
Yeah. And that vulnerability as well extends to the conversation we were having earlier about masculinity.
Yeah.
Being vulnerable is not a weakness, it is most definitely a strength.
Hmm.
If you want somebody to know you completely to the point where they can understand what not just what you want and need, but what is fundamentally who you are, a part
Hmm.
of who you are, the only real way to do it is to let your walls down and let them in, let them get closer to see you in your vulnerable state, even if it means you're not being a man.
Mm.
And if they can't accept you when you're not a man, they're probably not the one for
They're
you.
not the right person.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
So that's a superpower. Vulnerability is a superpower. It allows you
Absolutely.
to filter your own life
Hmm.
for people who aren't on your wavelength and people who shouldn't be in your energy, but also allows you to open up so you can then let in the people who should be there.
Hmm.
And yeah,
We
I am
should.
just rambling. I'm
No, no,
rambling.
no. We shouldn't be closed off to opportunities. I think being open and honest with people who you want to possibly have something with is important, because
Yeah,
that you and they
you
need to
do.
see you for who you are. And if they can do that, then you've found the right type of people to be in your life.
And it makes it so much easier to find those right people because if they know what you've been through and they know how you struggle,
Hmm.
it's going to give them that knowledge. It's going to give them that patience. It's going to give them that perspective and clarity when you are triggered for them not to go, oh, he's a fucking psycho. Oh God, he's such a loser. Why are you
Hmm.
crying? Oh my God, he's reliving something. Or
Yeah.
something's just happened that has sent him back 20, 30, 40 years
Hmm.
into it. Like I said, read some over the last couple of years, especially, some things have sent me right back to old
Yeah.
memories. I've been most recently being chased around my head by memories of worth and memories of having my voice taken away and never being able to make a decision, just having things decided for me,
Yeah.
and then also being told that my memories were wrong.
Hmm.
In fact, two of my abusers have told me to my face that I was delusional, that my memories were wrong. And I got an amazing memory for things like facial expressions, pictures, music. I've got a crystal clear memory of things like that. So to be told that I've made those up in my head,
Yeah.
oh, it's too much. It's like, no, off you go.
I think we give people's opinions too much power sometimes.
Mm.
Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, but we don't have to.
Some smell worse than others.
Exactly. We don't have to. It only affects us if we let it. Because I think if we have anything in life left, that's ours. It's choice. We choose what
Mm.
happens next. Life is 10% of what happens to you, but it's 90% of how you react to it. We
Yeah.
choose what has power going forward in a negative way. We can
Mm.
choose to do something positive the next day. What am I doing today that's going to make tomorrow better? Having that sort of mindset and making new pathways for your mind to go down rather than the ones that it's used to. Unfortunately, I've developed a habit over 4 years of self-harming and stuff like that, and I can't shake that yet. I haven't been able to, but that's a coping mechanism that I developed when I was really, really struggling. And, I don't do it as often as I used to, but I still do it because sometimes it does give me that release, me back to the moment. And I'm calm. I'm sort of calm again, and I can gather my
Mm.
thoughts and realize that I'm not back where I think I am. I'm not going through that again. It was a nightmare or a flashback. So, I know how powerful that inner thought and that inner critic is. And opinions feed that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Outside outside influences will feed your inner critic.
Yeah.
And that will beat you up with it.
Yeah. And I do agree with what you're saying about if you allow it, but it's like you say, flashbacks and things, and the way that memories that you've kept with a in a box with a tight lid on for 30 plus years, if somebody
Mhm.
shakes that box or opens it, it doesn't matter whether they intended to or not.
Yeah.
It's happened. It's
Oh, it's
happened.
coming. Yeah.
And you're
There's no
not going to
stopping
be
it.
able to stop it.
Once it's there, and I know only too well, and it's physically and mentally exhausting living with complex PTSD because I feel like I'm at war with myself every single day, and I got 6 different medications, and I think the waiting lists in the UK for support are shocking. I've been
Mm.
on the waiting list for ADHD treatment for 2 years, even though I've had a diagnosis, and I'm still waiting for EMDR treatment for the PTSD. That's the trauma specialist therapy for people with PTSD. And they told me it's going to be another 18 months for that. So, I just got to keep on with the medication they've given me, continue with therapy that I'm paying for myself because there was a waiting list for that as well, you know. So, do you think there's not enough support out there for people these days when they actually need it?
Well, there are things like emergency contacts through NHS, and there are things like Samaritans
Yeah,
and outreaches, but it's whether people choose to go down that path to reach for it, isn't it? And the sad truth of it is we're 8 billion strong now on Earth. How many people are? What's the population of the UK now? Is it like 70 million
something
plus?
like that.
Yeah, and like you say, 1 in 5. So I can't do the maths in my head right now because I'm
Yeah.
shattered.
No, it is. It is
One
one in
in five.
five will suffer
Yeah.
with a common mental health disorder now in the UK and the US.
Yeah. So that even out of the five, the 50 million, that's 10 million. How can the NHS cope with it?
I know, yeah, yeah.
We're social animals. That's why things like this are so important. It's why that mindset of reaching for others or allowing them to reach for you, for that openness and that ability, that willingness to connect and that willingness to support each other is so important. And the infrastructure just isn't there to support that number of issues without becoming a bloated waiting list. And then people drop off it or have to move, just like I did, and don't end up with access. I'm so lucky. I don't believe in doctrinized religion. I have a faith, but it's not to do with a religion. It's
Mhm.
like a spiritual faith of the universe. I am so grateful that my path led me to where I am and to who I am and to what I've been able to become. But it makes me sad to my core to think that there are all those people who are falling away from systems that can't provide for them and never getting the help they need. And like you say, leaving the planet. I think it's tremendously sad. And it's so
Absolutely.
important that people like you do this and other people do mental health streaming. People, even so something so simple as posting something motivational on Instagram or on TikTok, like a little spiel that's meant to build someone up. It's I think that those acts, especially with the prevalence of social media and how I mean I say the word insidious, but I don't mean it in a
Yeah.
really like it sounds, as in it's everywhere. It's
Oh, yeah,
ubiquitous.
yeah.
If more people did that, if more people tried to help one another across such a pervasive platform,
And
I think
it's that's where the conversation thing starts. Starting the conversation is the most important thing. And that's what we're doing, and that's what we've done in today's podcast. So finally, what message would you like to leave everyone with listening tonight who is currently fighting a battle on their own?
there is hope. Don't think that there are people like Dom
Mm.
on every street. There are people who will wait patiently while you talk, or cry, or rant, or
Mhm.
rent
Yeah,
garments. We will sit with you for hours if you need to. You are not alone. We've been there. We've come out the other side at different levels, different ways, at different times. We are waiting for you there. There's ways that you can stand up and feel that strength in your back. There's a way that you can stand up. You can see the light and get light in your eyes. Keep that hope
absolutely.
every day
Absolutely.
without fail. Don't give up.
And that they're seen. We see them, they're valued. I think that's an important message for everyone to take away. My final thing would be that everyone out there, you are valued, you are seen, your feelings are valid, and if you need help, then go and get them. You have got the strength to do that. And I hope this podcast episode, a lot of people will resonate with some of the things that we've been talking about today. But I want to thank you for joining the podcast. episode 1, brand new, big launch, goes live. It'll be live on YouTube on the 8th of July and Spotify on the 8th of July. I'll send you the link as well. If you want to message me your link to your channel and your socials, I'll put those in the video description as well. So if you just drop them to me on WhatsApp, I'll put them in the video description as well and link your channel in. But yeah, I'll get this all sorted out. We'll get it uploaded and it'll launch on the 8th of July. And I hope people really love this podcast. Thank you for coming on, my friend. Look after yourself, and I'll speak to you.
You too. Speak soon.
Take care, mate. Ta-ra.
Bye.
If I've gone off, I don't know how to get off.
I'll
I'll have to trim that part.